Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 37th episode of The Inbox, and today we're going to start off with a question from Wolfman Delta 07, who says that he's a big fan of all my content. Thank you. Question, he says that he currently owns a Carrack and he's looking to pick up a well-rounded ship for myself alone and possibly one other person. And what he was hoping to get is my opinion on what would be a very well-rounded ship for me to take, so I could do dogfighting, bounty hunting, exploration, trade, scaling slightly more towards combat. Unable Pawn actually responded to your question in the comments and pretty much nailed it, and I think most people here who've been around for a while probably know exactly what I'm going to say. The Avenger is a really, really strong option, primarily because I think it's built in a way that it's going to support a lot of your different requests. If you want to talk about dogfighting, it's already a pretty competent dogfighter. If you want to talk about bounty hunting, the Stalker variant actually has the option for the cells in the back. The Titan variant is basically the empty-backed version that allows you to carry cargo. Exploration, there's already been some concept art and some discussions about dropping the missiles and adding on extended fuel tanks to increase your range. So there's a little bit of everything that can be done in the Avenger. And if you want to actually save some money with the Avenger, you can end up just buying the Titan version, which is I think $50, and then that's going to allow you to actually get in cheaper, and then as you earn profits, you can buy and add more modularity to your craft, allowing you to be a little bit more effective overall. Now, the problem there is the Avenger really is only a one-person craft, so if you want something that's capable of, carrying a buddy along as well, but doesn't need to have a big crew requirement, the Cutlass may be an interesting option to look at, primarily just because it does the cargo. It can do bounty hunting. We see that with the Cutlass Blue. There's mentions about the Cutlass being a decent explorer. The only thing we don't know of right now is the dogfighting piece, primarily because it initially released, I would say, yes, it's supposed to be a good, nimble, agile, cool fighter, but the problem is they're splitting off some of that capability and giving that to the Buccaneer, and they're reworking the Cutlass, and we don't know what that's going to look like at the end of the day, so we just kind of have to cross our fingers and hope it ends up still being a fairly combat-capable ship, but I don't think they can swing too far away from that original concept, so that may be another one to consider, and it gives you a little bit higher crew capacity if you want it. Subs says he has a question. He's really interested in exploration, but I want to have a ship to play around with that has more recent standard equality from CIG. When do you think the redesigned Freelancer Dur and Constellation Aquila will be hangar ready or flight ready? And when do you think the Carrack will be hangar ready? I'm willing to melt several ships to get to Carrack when it comes out. I currently have a Freelancer Dur, but after seeing the redesigned base model Freelancer, I just can't stand to look at the Dur anymore. Thought about upgrading to the Aquila, but that has the exact same problem. So, yeah, as far as actual dates, we don't know. But here's the way it's going to work with CIG. What they've done is they know that they've got ships that need to be reworked to get up to the current level of quality. And what they're doing is they're going out and starting with the base model. And then after they fix that base model, anybody that owns any of the variants then gets gets to fly that one as a loaner. And what that's doing is it's allowing them to create their documentation, their design elements that they're going to implement onto other ships, but it allows them to also make those changes, get it into engine, see how it performs before doing it to all of the different variants, just to have to go back and redo them all if something's not right. So it's going to be coming. Your Freelancer Dur is going to get a rework and get closer to what the Freelancer stock version is. The Aquila is the same way. So it really just kind of depends on how fast everything goes. And I personally think that after Squadron 42's release, they're probably going to have a lot more assets that they're going to be able to, redesignate into different responsibilities, like working on these types of things. So yeah, I mean, if I guess your question really, or the answer to your question really comes down to patience. Are you willing to just buy the ship that you want in the end and just deal with having the base model in the meantime? Because if your problem is like you want an exploration ship but you don't want to look at the ugly old versions, well, there's not a lot of exploring you can do in game right now anyway. So if you get the Aquila or the Dur, well, then you're going to get the newer model to actually fly in the meantime. So there's not a whole lot really wasted there as far as your time is concerned. When the Carrack's going to come back for sale, I don't know. It's probably going to be November is the anniversary sale, and there's high probability that it'll be available then. As far as hangar ready goes, it's the one that's slated to be worked on after the Caterpillar, and the Caterpillar is supposed to be hangar ready in 2.7, I believe, which is only 2 releases away at this point, so probably 3 or 4 months. So I would say you're probably going to start seeing more development on the Carrack towards the end of the year, but again, it's just kind of a wait and see, and see how things all line up there. Mike MF Panic says, Hola STL, longtime lurker. Well, welcome out of the shadows. I have an Endeavor, a Herald, and a Reliant Sin in the exploration intelligence portion of my fleet. I was thinking about eventually grabbing the science-oriented modules for the Endeavor, but do you think that would make or be redundant considering the science focus of the Sin? I know we're waiting for more gameplay mechanics to manifest themselves, but I wanted to get your opinion. So, with the... This is interesting because I think what we're going to see is typically the bigger the ship, the more expensive the ship, the more advanced the ship, the more capable the ship is going to be. So when you start talking about, like the science modules of the Endeavor, they're going to be capable of doing more than what the Sin can do. And we're probably going to start seeing the smaller ships get you into the career. Like a prospector, for example, is capable of mining, but it's not capable of refining and, the mass amounts of storage that the Orion can do. So what we see with the Reliant Sin is probably a situation to where it can do scanning, it can do analysis, it can probably even, make some interesting discoveries. But that's probably never going to hold a candle to being able to capture something, bring it in, put it in the super collider on the Endeavor, and then really doing some sciencey type stuff on that ship. So I don't necessarily think there's redundancies there, because the flip side of that is, it's the age-old debate with all of these ships. Yes, the Endeavor can probably do more, but the Endeavor is a big ship. It's going to have higher operating costs. You're going to have more crew. So you're either playing with your buddies or you're hiring out NPCs, or you could just go out solo in your Reliant Sin. It just really depends on what your personal situation is, but I don't necessarily think that there's probably a certain level of redundancy, but I would say that just because you have the Sin, I wouldn't get the science modules, especially if you have an interest in doing the type of overclocking, discoveries, performance improvements, those types of things. I think those are probably still going to be really categorized to things that are best suited for the Endeavor science modules. Okay, Kevin, great job as always, man. Thank you. 2 questions, if I may. What are your thoughts on the Caterpillar as being used as a regular all-purpose hauler versus the whole series? Caterpillar is an awesome ship. I actually ended up picking up one during the last sale with the Dragonfly packs. I think it's going to be a ship that's going to be really, really interesting because it provides a ton of versatility. Now, you're just talking about an all-purpose hauler. I think it's going to do well in that role. It's got a lot of space in there. Now, if you're talking about just taking cargo from point A to point B in relatively secure space, nothing's going to touch the whole series. I mean, it's purpose-built to take the most cargo it possibly can from one location to another. So it's going to be really hard to beat the whole in that regard. But as far as the Caterpillar is concerned, it's got the cargo more protected. It has better weaponry on it. You get the ability to change out your cargo types a little bit, probably, and you can do more like offloading in space with the side doors that are supposed to open up on the little, stackable modules. So I think the Caterpillar is going to be an awesome trader. I think it gives you a lot of ability as a trader. I think it gives you a lot of flexibility as a trader, but it's not going to be the sheer quantity of trading that you can do in a whole. Now, I would feel a lot better taking a ship full of expensive goods into dangerous space in a Caterpillar over the whole series because it's protected, you have better weapons, your ship is a harder target. So I think those are the types of things to consider there. The other question you had was, have you seen the current Kickstarter for the Chronicles of Elira? The answer is no. You asked if I'm interested in survival MMO titles. If so, would you give the title some love? There you go. I mentioned the title. I don't know anything about the game. I'll look into it. As far as survival MMO titles, I tend to enjoy them for about a week, and then the redundancy of it just kind of... I don't know. They don't stick with me very much. But games like Nether were fun for a little bit. Some of the DayZ games were fun for a little bit. But for some reason, they just never hold my attention. And MMO games kind of fall into that category as well. But more specifically, like MMORPGs. Fun for a little bit. They don't hold my interest though. Paul Curran says, how will you be able to play with friends if there are more or different instances? So the instance system's one that I've talked about quite a bit. So I'm going to kind of make this quick. you're going to have the ability to wing up or pin people saying like this is a person of interest or this is a wingman or those types of things. So if you arrive at a destination and your buddy's there, you'll still see each other because the game will try and put you together. Now, if your buddy is engaged in some epic firefight and you fly in and there's already the max number of people in that instance, you're not going to get in there. But if you are warping into a different location with your friend and you're in the same like wing, you're going to show up in the same instance together. The game manager is going to try and keep everybody together because it has to. So yeah, and then the other thing is, Roberts recently talked about how, with their new cloud computing, they're really hoping to get closer to like 1,000 person instances. If they really do get to that number, which would be a huge accomplishment considering where we're at today, you're not going to have these types of issues. I mean, sure, there's 1,000-person organizations. My organization's over 1,000 people, but you're not going to have, in most situations, 1,000 people engaging each other in all these different areas of space. So that'll make things a little bit easier as well. Josh Reed says 2 questions. I like having ships that can do more than one thing really, or do one thing really well, but can also fill other secondary roles. Currently has a 350R and a Vanguard with all the battlefield upgrade kits. Do I see the 350R as being able to equip the 315 Explorer goodies and be just as effective? The 350R should be able to equip the exploration goodies, yes. It should be able to increase or improve the avionics. It should be able to add on a tractor beam, like those types of things. The 350R is never going to be as efficient as the 315P. I think the 315P is going to be tuned in a way to give you extended range. The 350R is tuned in a way to give you the most performance and speed as possible. And you're never going to see those 2 engines maxed out for that just pure brute strength of force to be effective as a long-range explorer. So that's something that would be in place. You mentioned strapping on more missiles to make it like a 325. That's a really good setup, especially for combat and arena commander right now. You're also thinking about the Omega, and could it fit with this question as well? Would it make a ship that's heavily armed but still good maneuverability with a second hauling cargo option? The Omega is a racer, so it actually is lightly armed. It's not armored well, and it's while it has good maneuverability, it doesn't have a cargo option. And I believe that's because it has the 3rd engine, which gets in the way of the ability to carry a store-all. Don't quote me on that. For some reason, I'm blanking on the Mustangs a little bit. So if somebody wants to weigh in on that, they can. You're leaning towards the Redeemer, though, but not sure if it would be a good gunboat that can also carry some cargo. We're due to get a Redeemer rework, and when we get that rework, we're going to have a little bit better idea on what flexibility and modularity we get with the ship. There's been discussions of adding a cargo module to it to kind of open up some of that gameplay. But I personally think we're going to see some sort of change with the ship. My question and fear has always been, what do we sacrifice to get the increased flexibility? Because I like the ship in its really intended role, but I am a huge Redeemer supporter. And for our patron questions today, the first of which is from Captain Crappy. I came to think about the ICC missions that is currently in the alpha version of the game. I kind of like the way the missions are set up. My question is, would it be possible to make mission progress into chains depending on how the player responds to them? Thinking about a similar system to what's in Guild Wars 2, nothing large, but small missions you could do as a single individual or with friends, escalating in difficulty as you go. And then another patron, Chef, actually bounces off of that and says that chain missions can be a lot of fun, especially when options are given within the chain. Like you go get intel, then you gather more intel, but this time you have to fight somebody or steal something, and then you have to be using that intel to disrupt supply chains. I think Chef is actually hitting the nail on the head there. I think we're going to see chain missions, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be like you walk up to an NPC and he's like, hey, buddy, you want to make some money? You got to do this mission, then this mission, then this mission, and this mission. I think what's going to happen is we're probably going to see them be more organic. They naturally evolve. Like somebody pays you to go steal some intel, and you go steal that intel and you bring it back, and that guy is like, hey bub, you did a great job. You want to make another $1 because now I need you to take this intel to point C. And you're like, okay, sure, I'll take that $1. And then you go fly it over to point C, and then the guy there says, you got me this information really reliably. What I was going to do with it was use it to hijack this delivery of goods from, I don't know, Terra de Sol. I don't know why I always use those two, probably because they're familiar. And you're like, yeah, I'll take that $1. And you fly over there, you hijack those goods, and then you end up selling it on the black market. And then the black market dealer then says something like, you've done a great job selling me these, and I've got faith that you can handle this. And now I'm trying to, yeah, it's going to probably be like that. And, it might even develop into storylines to where it says, you stole those weapons from this cartel. This cartel is now at risk. We want to take this advantage to attack this cartel. Something like that. So I think there are going to be chain types, but I don't think you're going to get into a mission knowing it's going to turn into a chain, if that makes sense. Almost like your reputation amongst the people you're working for increases, which naturally leads towards more missions being provided. And for the last question, here's from Iggy Pie, another patron. Says, what would you love to see that provides more gameplay in Alpha 2.x? Since 2.0 we're forced to do the same gameplay over and over again, what would you change if you were CIG? This question's about 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old. What we're seeing from CIG is actually a better plan as far as what's on the roadmap to be released. And that includes Star Marine coming in 2.6. 2.5, we got Grim Hex 2.7. We're going to start seeing some new mechanics as well as some new ships. I think we're getting to a point to where development is going to really start releasing. I think for me, what would I change if I was CIG? I probably would have done some rudimentary version of Star Marine at some point, because I think that's the big content that's coming. That's the one that's totally different from anything we have today. Now, granted, you can go fight it out on Security Port Korea if you want to, but it's not necessarily the same thing. I probably, over the last year and a half since we've known about it, would have actually probably done some little teaser or gameplay of it just to give people a taste. But honestly, they do a pretty good job of keeping us informed of what's coming, especially more recently, that I think we're probably in a good place. But Star Marine is going to be huge, and then the next thing that's going to be really huge is the ability to travel to other systems. So, that's it for this video. I appreciate you guys watching. As always, if you have questions, get them into the comments. Otherwise, stay tuned for more. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.